Welcome to Pump Up Your Academic Workflow, where we will be talking about note-taking reference management. And I think, academic workflow in general, and you'll be getting a hands-on tutorial in reference management from Keshav in just a bit. Your academic workflow is all of the stuff that you do, that I do, going from, oh, I had a slide, but I didn't put it. Going from taking in information in classes and in meetings with advisors and people like that, and in literature, and transforming those into notes so you can remember stuff, and then into brainstorming and beginning to write and outlining, etc., and then into eventually finished writing. The notes you take on literature you're reading, you'll want to put into a reference management package and keep your notes there if you can, because as I don't know which of as Richard Kenneth Roberts asked about, it feels like he's reinventing the wheel when he works on a new paper in an area he's already published in. So yeah, we're mostly going to be working in areas we've already published in once we've started publishing. And so, yeah, we may revisit a lot of the same citations. Hopefully we're writing on something that's not exactly the same thing. So we will have read more and we will have other things to refer to, but the foundational articles, especially those things that you might cite at the very top of a paper, those might well be the same from paper to paper, or at least a bunch of them. Let's see. The basic structure is, yes, Keshav's going to start, then we're going to go to note-taking, and we're going to explore a couple of particular note-taking apps, and then more generally, and then at the end, we'll have a half hour after everybody's, after the hour and a half, where we can work on people's individual stuff. So that's it. Keshav, handing it over to you.
We're going to start today's workshop with the reference management hands-on tutorial. And we, as a team, thought this was important just because we started realizing the use of reference managers, at least me personally, only the first time I actually needed it. And I felt by then it was already a little too late. So I first time started looking into reference managers when I needed to cite for my paper. And I'm like, hey, we could use reference managers because this seems really tedious. But by then it was kind of late because I don't have this entire database of all the papers that I've read. And it gets difficult. So if we can inculcate this habit from the early stage of our academic careers, I think this is a really helpful habit to have. So just briefly talking about some basic steps in an academic workflow would be you have classes and group meetings, which would lead to some sort of reading of either books, papers, taking notes on that reading. Then once you have all these notes, you compile them into like a database or your bibliography. And the ultimate goal in most academic workflows would be writing. That writing could be a research paper or an article or just like an assignment for a course. And reference management actually ties in all of the aspects ranging from reading all the way to writing and helps us organize each one of those steps along the way. And with time, there are a dozen or more of these reference managers that keep popping up. But today I'm going to be focusing on Zotero, which is one of these applications. And I think Zotero is really nice just because it's free and open source. So I appreciate open source software. And it's really helpful in organizing multiple steps, including your reading and discovering new papers, organizing that literature, annotating and note-taking, which the other group members will talk a little more about, and then ultimately writing your thesis or research paper. So Zotero can appear a little clunky and old-fashioned. It's not as fancy as some of the paid and newer reference managers. But I think if used correctly, it can really streamline your research pipeline by reducing effort and minimizing the number of errors you can make. So before we get started, I'm going to quickly just put some links in the chat. So for those of you who haven't already set up the UMD reload button, I strongly recommend that you do that right now, just because it's a really nice way to use our UMD proxy to get through research articles which are behind a paywall. Zotero and Zotero connector, if you haven't already, I strongly recommend that you download that now. And I've also compiled a small Zotero cheat sheet, which you could use even after this this presentation. This is going to be available to all of you all. So even if you don't remember some of the points I made, you can use this cheat sheet as a nice reference to guide you through using Zotero, at least on a basic level. And so, yeah. So while you, those of you who haven't downloaded the UMD reload button or the Zotero and Zotero connector, you can do that. In the meanwhile, I just wanted to share some results from the survey. So most of the students who are attending today's tutorial seem to be from the first year of study. So I've tried to make this tutorial more about a nice introduction where I can give you an insight into reference managers and how to use them. But I hope to have some tips which might be useful to more experienced users as well. So hopefully everyone has something to take back after today's tutorial. And I'm just going to give everyone a couple of minutes till they get Zotero downloaded. And
while you're doing that, I'm also going to put in the chat our slides, because how much sense would it make to do a thing about note taking and not give people the slides to take their notes on? Now, I'm just sharing view access, so if you want to take your notes directly on the slides, you'll need to make your own copy of it. And if you're one of the many people who does have edit access, don't make notes on it while we're in the middle of the presentation, please.
if you'll have downloaded Zotero or have it already, could you just put like a thumbs up reaction in chat so I know how many of you all have done that? Okay, it looks like a lot of you have it. So I'm just going to quickly open up Zotero. So I hope you all can see my screen. So the first thing we're going to do is if you open up the Zotero application, it could be on your Mac, on Linux, or on Windows. It's going to look pretty much the same. And so the first thing we're going to do is within your library, you can create something called a collection. And so what this collection is just like, at least how I like to use it is to separate my project. So if I have one project on, say I'm working on a neuronal network model, a specific model, and I would have a collection for that. So let's go ahead and create a new collection. And you all can follow along with me. So it would be a nice follow along tutorial. So, and for me, my project is say it's going to be reservoir computing. So that's one of the projects I'm working on right now. So I'm going to go ahead and create a collection for that. And this is going to show up as a collection under my library. And the nice thing is you can also create sub-collections. So if I have a sub-project within that project, I can create, say, a deep model within reservoir computing. So I can have reservoir computing as my overall collection, and the deep model could be a sub-collection or a sub-project within that. So this could be different for each one of you. You can have your own method of organizing it, but this is like a nice way. I think it's useful to think about collections as different projects. So the next thing I'm going to do is all of you all can go ahead and open up any one paper that you think is interesting or is relevant to your research. So in this case, I've opened up one paper from PRL here, which is very relevant to the project I'm doing. So each one of y'all can go ahead and open up one paper that you think is important to your research. And we're going to go through the steps of how we can add this to our Zotero database and then organize it from there. Okay, so first things first is that if I try to access this PDF, it's not going to let me because PRL is it's behind a paywall. You need some kind of subscription to access it. So after you've used or set up your reload button, when I click reload, it's going to reload this page through the proxy. And one thing Zotero connector does is automatically recognizes that I'm using a proxy on this website. And if I say accept, anytime I open this journal, it's going to redirect me through the proxy automatically. So anytime I open another PRL paper now, it's going to redirect me through the Zotero proxy automatically, which is a really handy feature.
Hey, Keshav.
So Keshav. Oh.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask if you did anything to connect Chrome to Zotero, or that was just like.
So Zotero connects to Chrome through the Zotero connector, and I put the link in the chat. So Zotero connector is something that just links your browser to your Zotero application. That could be through Safari, through Firefox, or Google Chrome. So whichever browser you're using, the appropriate Zotero connector app would be your way to link your browser to Zotero. So yeah, once you have this proxy set up, once you have the Zotero connector, it's going to show up as a small icon to the right of your address bar. And if I click Save to Zotero here, it's going to ask me which collection I want to save it in. Say I'm going to save it in deep model for now. It's showing me that it has the entire PDF, and I'm just going to go through the details and see that everything looks fine. And I can say, give it a tag saying, it's a methods paper. So for now, I'm just adding a tag. So you can add tags through this bar right here. But I'm going to show you that you can also add tags later on. So let's just add my first paper to my collection. So now if I open up Zotero, it's going to show up as my first paper here. And it has all the details. It has the authors, the abstract, and all the details in here. So this is one way you can add your paper. Another way is just to drag and drop a PDF into this into Zotero. So what happened was when I first started using Zotero, I already had my own PDF collections on my computer because that's how I organized my literature, was me just keeping them in different folders on my computer, and then I would have all the PDFs in that folder. So when I was migrating to Zotero, this feature was really important because I could just take all those PDFs and drag and drop them onto this application. So what I'm going to do is, if I go to my, I just take one of these papers, say this one right here, I can just drag it and drop it onto Zotero. And what Zotero does is it's going to quickly just read off all the metadata from it. And even though the PDF had this really wonky name saying 1, S2, blah, 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 as soon as the Zotero reads it, it's already got the name of the paper, the author, and it's read off all the metadata from it. And this is also a pretty useful way of putting your paper onto Zotero if you already have an existing structure in your computer with in your downloads folder. The third way you could add a paper is this magic wand button right here. So if I click this magic wand button and I just take, say, the DOI from this paper, and I can just go in and paste that DOI in there, and it's going to just read off all the data from that DOI and add it into your database. So if you can see here that all of these have a PDF attached to it, but this one doesn't seem to have a PDF. So sometimes Zotero will do something where it doesn't download the PDF along with it. And you can ask it to find an available PDF, but sometimes that won't happen either. So let's go ahead and just, if I just download this PDF into my downloads folder, and I go to Zotero, I can just say attach new file. Yeah, so if I go to Zotero and I say attach new file, I can attach a PDF onto it. So that I can, so if I download the PDF later, even though it doesn't have it in Zotero, I can attach the PDF to it. So now going back to so once you have added papers to Zotero, the main thing you need to do with Zotero is organizing. And organizing, I think, is where Zotero really shines. So I mentioned you have these collections, but the problem with collections is when you have a lot of projects and a lot of sub-projects, you cannot search them. So collections are not searchable. So I can't search for deep model. But what I could do is add something called tags. So each paper, if I click on the paper, it has an option to add a tag. And I can add a tag to this paper. So say this paper is a review paper. So I'm just going to say review. So that would just, so anytime I want to look at all the review papers that I have, I can just type review in here. And it's going to give me the review that I have.
Oh, Keshav.
Yeah.
I forget. Can you add tags in bulk? Like, say you want to tag all your reservoir computing or papers with reservoir computing or RC or something. Can you do that all at once?
I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah. But so there are multiple systems of tagging. So I'm going to just give you my system of how I tag it, but this is somewhere you can get creative and organize it in your own way. So I like to have 3 types of tags. One is called a status tag. So status tag, I just give it as status as unread. So anytime I say ST unread, I'm just trying to label this paper as I've not read it yet. Or I could have another way of saying, say, ST read. So this would just mean that I've read this paper, I'm done with it. Or I could have another one saying ST cited. So I've not just read it, but I've also cited it. So I'm well aware of this paper, and it's pretty useful. So that's one system of tagging, is using a status tag. So as soon as I download a paper from the internet, I typically have the habit of immediately tagging it as unread. And then whenever I get to actually reading it on later, I'll transfer it to the read category. So you can see that my unread and read already come with the colors, but this usually doesn't happen. This is something I've set up. So the way I can give a tag a certain color is just, if I right click the tag, I can say assign color, and you can just use whatever organizational color that you want. So I like green for the papers that I've read, just that it becomes a nice visual way of me organizing my papers, and my unread would be in the red color, so that I know those are the important ones that I need to read. So you can see the tags are really important, but the problem with tags is that they don't have a tree-like structure. So suppose my collection has like a project and sub-projects, and then even sub-projects below that, but the tags don't have a tree-like structure. So the workaround that I found with this is to create my own tree-like structure. So what I mean by that is, say, I'm going to add a tag here, which will be ML RNN. So what I'm just saying is that this paper is part of my machine learning project. And within machine learning, it's focusing on one particular aspect, which is recurrent neural networks, or RNN. And this could be really different based on what field you're doing. And so in this case, I'm just going to say ML RNN RC. So this is within recurrent neural networks. This is particularly focusing on reservoir computing. So I'm going to give it this tag right here. And the advantage of this method is that if I want to search for all my ML RNN papers, it's going to give me the papers which relate to ML and RNN. But if I want to focus within that on RC, I can search ML RNN RC, and accordingly, it will search for the papers which have those tags. And this is a nice way to get around the fact that tags don't have a tree-like structure by artificially imposing your tag system, which has this structure within it. So yeah, moving on, I think the next thing I want to focus on is how to make notes. So Zotero has two ways that we can make notes with our papers. One is right here in the notes tab. I can add a note. It has some really powerful editing features, which is uncommon for just making a short note like this. But the way I find this most useful is once I'm done reading the paper, I can add all the bullet points or just add like quotes. Because many times what you want to take away from the paper is probably just one line. And that one line is probably something that you would use to cite it later. And then you can just add a quote from that paper, which you think is the most important highlight of that paper. So that later on, when you're going through your database, you just don't need to read the entire thing. You have those quotes or those bullet points right there. But also while you're reading the paper, you might want to make some annotations on the PDF itself. And this can be done directly through Zotero. If I say view PDF, it's going to open it in my native PDF viewer. And here I can just make my own notes by editing it. I can highlight certain sections of it. I can make my own note here saying, and later on when I open this PDF, it's going to have all of those notes saved. So that's another good way to have my notes. So I can have annotations on my PDF. And once I'm done reading a paper, I could make an untitled note here, give it a title, say this is my summary, and then just write down, this is, and then have like a summary here, maybe bullet points and a quote from there. So yeah, that's all about the organizational part of Zotero, which I think is powerful. I'm just going to show like a sample.
Keshav, could I ask a question about notes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
When I was writing my dissertation, I had this like running text document where I would kind of take notes for each paper. Sort of like, like if I read a paper and it had a really interesting method section or like a specific result that I knew I was going to cite, like I would take that note in that document. So like two questions. One of them, do you know if notes in Zotero are searchable? Or is that like the search field will search through notes? Do you know?
No, the search field doesn't search through the notes.
Okay. And so like that extends to my second question, which is, do you know if there's a way to download notes, like maybe like a compiled, all the notes that you've taken for all the papers in your library or something?
There is.
Yeah, okay. So you can, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so I think that's a really useful, it sounds like a useful feature that I would have found useful, just to have like a separate, like, oh, here are all the notes instead of having like to click on a paper to see the notes for that paper. I don't know if like it's easy to show it, but like maybe it might be also easy to just Google it, but I wanted to.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's for your whole library or for individual papers, but yeah, what is Zot file? Is that the?
Yeah, so actually, yeah, I was just going to answer that question with, since Zotero is an open source application, it actually has a whole bunch of third-party plugins that you could use for most things that you can imagine. So if you think it's been a problem to you, it's probably someone else has thought about this problem as well. And Zotero has their entire list of plugins which are available on their website. And you can just go through this list of plugins to see what kind of features they've added on to this, onto the Zotero application. So I guess there should be a plugin that would be able to compile all your notes into one document.
Thanks.
So I just want to show one example of a short, like a small collection of papers that I have here. You can see it's nicely color coded for the ones I've read and the ones I haven't read yet. I have all my tags. And the tags are also here. You can just click one of them. So if I just hit unread, it's just going to give me all my unread papers. And if I click the read ones, it's going to give me the papers I've read. So it's a nice visual way of organizing my papers. And yeah, these have all my notes. And so now coming to the place where I think most of you might need Zotero is when you need a site. So the good thing is Zotero comes in with with plugin attachments for most word processors. That could be Microsoft Word, LibreOffice, or even Google Docs. And actually, I'm going to show you that adding citations and references is so much easier when you have Zotero, rather than adding it manually, which I did for my first few research papers before I realized that this is too much and I need to find a better way of doing this. So I'm just going to quickly just give me a moment. I'm just going to open up a Word document and just show you how we can cite.
I just found some extracted annotations from a document of mine if people want me to show that off later.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to open up Microsoft Word real quick. So for those of you who downloaded Zotero on Windows, it should typically come in with the Zotero Word plugin pre-installed. And for those of you who haven't, you can go to the Zotero website, go to the list of plugins, and they should have one for Microsoft Word or any other Word editor that you're using. I'm going to demonstrate it on Word, but it's almost the same across any other word processor. So let's say I have some text written here, and I want to add a citation here. So then when I go to my Zotero tab, I can click Add Edit Citation. And what it's going to do is firstly ask me what my citation style is going to be. So this is another really nice feature is many times you need to resubmit a paper to a different journal, and you probably have a different method of citation. And all it's going to be is just going into your Zotero and just picking a different one rather than going and re-editing your text citations all through. So let's just say I stick with APA. And now it's going to open up a Zotero search bar right here. So what this bar is, it's really nice to search through your entire database. So now let's say I search Jaydeep. I know I'm going to cite one of these papers, so I'm just going to click this paper right here and then hit enter. And what it did, it's entered the citation in the required format. And once I'm done writing my entire document, I probably need a bibliography in the end. So I can hit the Add Edit Bibliography button here, and it's just going to have my entire citation at the end of my document where I'm going to have my bibliography. The good thing of this is it's live. So if I add a new citation, so if I want to add a second citation, saying, so I add a second citation right here. It added the citation, but it automatically appended it to my bibliography. So as I'm writing my paper, it's going to automatically populate my bibliography, so that's something I don't need to even think about. So as I'm writing it, it's going to, and later if I realize that I want to change the format of my citations, all I need to do is go to my document preferences and say I change it to a different format. It's going to go ahead and re-edit all my citations and change the format everywhere. So I hope I've convinced you that Zotero is really the way to go when you're not just reading and organizing your papers, but also when you're citing it. You really need to use the power that we have with this technology instead of doing a lot of manual effort, which I started with. So yeah, I think that's a good place to stop and ask if anyone has specific questions about Zotero.
Hi, I had a question.
Uh-huh.
Do you know if there's a plugin or a way or something to search the contents of papers?
Yeah, I don't know one right now. I mean, I've just been doing it myself, but I'm sure
yeah, hold on. Let me.
If you can share the list of the Zotero plugins, I think that's a nice place to start looking.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, but two really important plugins that I wanted to talk about were, firstly was Zotfile. So Zotfile is something that helps you organize your files across different, not just different platforms, but even within your computer. And I find it especially useful for people who use an iPad. So you want to edit the same file on your iPad, but the notes should be transferable to your desktop computer where you have your entire database. So in that case, using Zotfile makes this process seamless where you don't have multiple copies of the same file, but it actually organizes all into one simple database. And also, for those of you who use LaTeX, which I use more often than Microsoft Word, there is a BibTeX plugin for Zotero, which is really useful. And you can just export your BibTeX quite simply and then attach that to any LaTeX editor that you use, like Overleaf or locally as well. I forgot to highlight one feature, which I think this question makes it quite nice. So say I want to I want to add multiple papers to my database at once. So suppose I go to Google Scholar and let's say I go for a particular search term, RNN models for forecasting. And say I want to add all the papers that I find in this result into my database. If I hit this save to Zotero button right here, it's going to ask me which papers I want to add, so I can just go and put a checkbox on multiple papers.
Where is, I'm not seeing what you're at a save to Zotero thing?
Yeah, so once I click it on top, it shows me this Zotero. Doesn't
Keshav, you're still sharing the word.
Oh, okay.
I have an answer to that previous question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just quickly, I don't think you can search the entire contents of every paper through Zotero, but unless you do it through your operating system and look at your whole Zotero tree, storage tree. But you can search all of the metadata, including the abstract. So that can get fairly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so yeah, I forgot my screen wasn't sharing before. So I went to Google Scholar and I searched for a particular search term. And say I want to add multiple papers at once. If I just hit the save to Zotero file here, it's going to ask me which ones I want to add to the library. And so I can say I can check multiple papers here. And then once I hit OK, it's going to add all of those papers into my database, which I think is quite important sometimes when you want to add multiple papers at once. And now it's.
Could I make a comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
Don't do a huge number at once because it can take a long time. It goes a lot faster if you do like 1 or 2 than if you do 10.
For sure, it does. And also, I would recommend before you save it, just quickly glance at the stuff once before it gets saved or once it gets saved, because sometimes the Zotero connector or even just saving it could run into some errors and you see something which looks clearly wrong. That's something you could correct as soon as you're downloading it. It doesn't happen too
also
often.
If I could say, the metadata it's going to grab from the Google Scholar citation is often going to be of lower quality than the metadata it'll get if you get it through its DOI or something like that.
Yeah. If you go through the official, like if I go to the APS or my Nature, like through the journal portal itself, it's always much better than. But I think, as Siggie said, the DOI method in that case is the best fit. You can just find the DOI and add it through the magic wand button. So yeah, I think that's a good place to stop unless everyone else has more questions to ask about Zotero. If we need it, I could also quickly just show that it's equally easy to add citations to Google Docs. So I'm just quickly sharing my screen here with the cheat sheet that I've added. So if any of you need this afterwards, I've shared the link in the chat. You all can just access this cheat sheet as a nice way to get started with Zotero. So even in Google Docs, it has the Zotero tab, which has roughly the same functionality. So if I click the add citation button here, it's going to open up. Just give it a second.
Oh, thank you, Ruben. So Zot file doesn't automatically extract all the Zotero notes into something, although I think you can just grab them. what it does is it grabs the annotations that are actually in your PDF and puts them into your Zotero notes. So that is very nice. And I forgot about the other features about having it sync to somewhere else that you want. Because I really wish I already had that set up, because I want to show you annotating a PDF on my iPad later.
Yeah, my computer's struggling a little bit with all the applications I have open right now, so I'm just gonna stop sharing right now. And yeah, I think Siggie can get started with some of the note taking, and I think it'll be a nice interface between the moving from Zotero to actually taking notes and what you've read.
Okay, is everybody looking at everybody's faces? Hold on, let me get rid of that. And let's see, where are we? We are here. So yeah, so note taking. Oh, and I remember it said something, there were some questions or comments right at the beginning. So let me look back at the chat now that we're talking about note taking. Oh, I started trying to look at Research Rabbit. It looked cool, but I was just captivated by what Keshav was saying. So academic note-taking tips, that's and lit review is daunting. That's what we'll try to think about. And Anna says, hoping to learn how to be more efficient, buried under the weight of papers and writing. Yes, that's very familiar. So, so let's see. On note-taking, there are a million different kinds of note-taking. There are many kinds of note-taking applications. There are, you know, where the line should be drawn between note-taking and task management and just simple to-do and project management and document collaboration, and I mean, all of these things, and you know, work communication. I mean, we can do all this through Slack or through Microsoft Teams, or you know, most of us are kind of inundated with ways of taking notes and keeping track of all the various things we need to do. So we'll look at a couple that are really specifically about taking notes on ideas and stuff, you know, like the kind of note taking we're talking about. And one thing that is a common theme through many note taking apps and Slack and GitHub and Stack Overflow and a million other places is Markdown. So if you don't know what Markdown is, then it's worth knowing something about. And I'm going to just say a little bit about it before Spandan begins, because both of the apps that he's going to be demoing use Markdown as their main way of, you know, as their format for putting notes in. So Markdown was, you know, when HTML came out in the early 90s, that was a human readable way of doing formatted documents. But, you know, it wasn't very human readable, but it was a lot more human readable than a binary file or an SGML file. But, you know, 10 years later or so, HTML was getting uglier and more full of stuff. And so Markdown came into the world, and it's a pun on markup. So it's not a markup language, it's a markdown language. And the goal of it is to give you a genuinely human readable way of making formatted documents, so that you can, in a text document, include links, or embed files, or have headings, or italic, or bold, or lists, or even tables and stuff. And let's see. Now, that's not all going to show up in just your plain text editor, but there are very simple. So the original Markdown was just a Perl script that would turn your Markdown formatted text file into an HTML file that would have all of that, and then you could look at it in a browser. I'll talk more about that after. But now that you've seen, you know, these are the simple ways you can write things, and then they appear in the formatted way. So I will hand it over to Spandan.
Actually, before Spandan gets started, I just wanted to test if the polls were working, just to take like a short break from the talk. So I'm just going to quickly have like a quick poll for the audience. So yeah, we can just go ahead and answer that. I just want to test the poll system was working, because I was.
Wait,
Keshav, I don't see the options. I'm seeing the results, but.
Oh, maybe because you're a co-host.
You're asking us about pizza?
Okay.
Or are you asking us about whether we want to take a break?
Oh, no, this is just like I just wanted to have a test poll just to see that the polls were working, just because I wanted to add a few questions later on. So the pizza question was just a sample question about pizza.
It's gonna get controversial though.
But I think it would be interesting to see the results.
Oh, I guess since I'm a host, I can't take the poll.
Yeah, you can't take it.
Well, it looks like it's working. So
okay, so I'm just gonna end the poll and show the results just to see that it looks like most of us want to work from a hybrid system of working. And also, this is the one I particularly agree with, is that yes, pineapples should be on pizza, just because the sweet really balances out that salty flavor. But anyhow, so yeah, now that the polls, I know that they're working, we can use them for some audience questions later on. And now I can give it to Spandan, who's going to get started on some note-taking applications.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Keshav and Siggie. I'm gonna quickly share my screen here. Just give me a sec. Can you see the slides?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, Siggie earlier had given us an introduction regarding the general idea of note-taking and why it's pretty useful. There are many different usages, which those were also covered earlier, that those having a proper record of what we have gone through previously helps us in the future, and also to share with others if we are working in a team. We talked about Markdown, and there were previous works done regarding the benefits of notes taken by pen and paper, or like handwritten notes, versus things those were typed down. And studies have shown that notes taken by pen and paper, they help us to remember them for much longer time. Although the versions that were typed could be stored for much longer time scale. Those can't be easily just misplaced. So both has certain pros and cons. And we had taken certain questions. We had put certain questions as part of our survey before the workshop. We saw that more than half of the participants did not use an application pretty regularly, although we had pretty high interest in knowing about them. And the ones that we wanted to learn most about were OneNote, Evernote, and just simple pen and paper. Although, unfortunately, we are not going to cover either Evernote or OneNote, because both of them were not open source. and we're limited to certain platforms. So we have to choose other open source applications, which still somewhat gives us the similar features that we most likely gonna end up using. So the first one we are gonna talk about today is Simple Note. It's first thing, of course, it's a free note-taking application. It comes with Markdown support, as Siggie was mentioning. One plus point is it's accessible via the most common web browsers. So it's a web-based application. At the same time, you can download this from Play Store, Apple Store. Bottom left, I have put screenshot from the Play Store, and it's available on these all kind of platforms: Android, Linux, Windows, iOS, Mac OS. And let me say here, it's not true for most of the applications that we have. So this is a pretty plus point of this of Simple Note, that it's available across so many different platforms. Now I would go to a different, just give me a sec. I would change my screen here. Okay, I hope you can see I'm on the website, app.simplenote.com. You can see this. As you could see, as you could sort of figure out from the name, the main structure of all the panels, they are pretty simple and straightforward enough. On the top left, we have all the notes that I have put down. Then there is this main panel where you write stuff or try to visualize it. And on the top right are the action panels, where there are very limited options. For a beginner, there are not too many fancy advanced features that you could use, but I would say that's one of the plus points of this, because it gives a much nice learning slope so that you could reach towards the further advanced features. The first feature that I'm going to point towards is collaborate and publish. So just imagine yourself being in a group meeting with other collaborators, and there are different groups involved where all of you are taking notes. And maybe you lost some part while the meeting was going on. You just missed a certain part. So if, for example, on the top right, I have already put this, like I put the tick mark here. By default, it doesn't come with the tick mark. And you publish that and then copy the link here. What I would do here further is open a new link, then paste that link that I had just copied. We could see the notes, which is shareable now. So you could share around this link with your fellow collaborators or others, maybe lab mates, so that they could take a look at the notes that you had taken as well. And pretty much related to this one, the next thing I would talk about is collaborate. So in the first one, when I shared the link, they could see the link, like what notes I had taken down, but they could still not edit anything on top of it. But if I give collaborate permissions on here, I could add emails as I wish here. For example, I think on this note, I had given collaborative permissions to Keshav and Siggie, so they could come in anytime, make any changes on the notes, and that way all of us are on the same page regarding the notes being taken from that meeting or the work, whatever we are working on. The second feature, which is directly connected to this, is called history. Version tracking is a very important feature of any this kind of collaborative softwares. It might be Git, it might be LaTeX, or this kind of things where there are different versions as and when user puts forward any changes. And it's very important to keep a track of those. So on the top right in the actions panel, we go here, we click history, and we see a sliding bar at the bottom. So we're right now at the extreme right end, which is the latest version of this file. And I had, sorry, let me go further down. And I had shared that with this with Keshav and Siggie. I would try to see now whether any of them had made any, whether any of them had made any changes or not. So I know the thing that I had put down in the first place, and then I start sliding down. This is where I had sort of left it. So I see Keshav added one line in the other stuff part, and then the random part as well. He put grocery shopping in the random part. And then as you move further back in time, you see all the things start disappearing, and at the start, there is almost nothing. So it's a very easy way to control the different versions, which helps a lot when you're sharing this kind of notes with other team members. So that's a pretty useful feature as well. Although I won't oversell this at this point, because there is a con that I noticed, which is, although it shows me the changes, it doesn't differentiate between the changes made by me and the changes made by Keshav. So that's a very important thing. I think they should have added it in the first place, that there should be a distinction between changes that I made and changes my other team members had made in the file. The third thing that I would point out from here is, which Siggie had covered before, is Markdown. This is what I had written down to create this note. As you could see, there are this kind of asterisks and hashes, which creates sections, subsections, then writing in bold, writing in italics. We don't see any panels like LibreOffice or MS Word here on the top. So whatever thing we are trying to do here, create bullet points, make them bold, italic, this kind of things, everything has to be done in Markdown. And if you have to insert any link, which I have done here using this syntax, putting link in square brackets, then inserting the link here, then putting image in square brackets, then putting the link here. Once we preview the whole thing, then the image comes up, then the links also come up here in Markdown format. So it supports Markdown, but in general, for a person who is pretty much new to Markdown, it might be somewhat tricky at the start, but it gets better. And I should also point this out, it's not that common of having Markdown support in other note-taking softwares. Evernote doesn't have it. There's been a lot of noise regarding why doesn't Evernote, one of the most popular note-taking softwares, not have that. But yeah, Simple Note, although it's pretty simple, it has Markdown support. The fourth one that I'm going to point towards, the fourth feature, it's called internal links. For example, this notes that I had made for today, there is this link. It's called How to Be Productive. And this is a note I had created already. It's not something, a link on the web. So How to Be Productive, this note here is on the left. So one way to go there is just click here, or I could just call it from here itself, like clicking here, and I would go towards this note. Within this note, you could create one more link. So you could have nested structures. So there's a link of this to real. I click here, I go to a meme of this sort. Now one might ask, I mean, it's pretty cool and everything, but what's the usefulness of this feature? I would say when you have different notes related to different days or different meetings, you might want to revisit back to one notes and try to connect it to the note you are currently taking. For example, I'm here right now. This is exactly a note I was taking in one of my meetings with my PI and other folks. This is the notes from 20th September. I had just blurted out these things here, and I wanted to refer back to the notes I had taken roughly a week back. So I would just click here, meeting notes 9:14, and this is where it takes me. I go to the notes of this day, and I have all these things here. Just if I have to demonstrate quickly, how would I do this? Right now, I just delete this whole thing. And so what it shows is just earlier meeting notes, but the link is gone. So what would I do is go to the note of the previous day, top right, actions, copy link. So the link is now copied. I'd go to the place where I want to paste it. And this is done. If I now click here, I would go to the other note.
That's not quite right. It's understanding that that's a URL, so it's putting it as a link, but you need the parentheses around it to do what you meant to do.
Yep, I think now it's done. Already I had copied the published link by mistake. So if I click here, I go to the previous node that I was expecting to go to. Thanks, Siggie, for pointing that out. So in the top right, actions and copy internal link is the way to connect these nodes between themselves. And the last thing that I would point out is pinning stuff and checklists. Right now I have only one node on the top left, as you could see, with this pin sign. So this would always be featured at the top of the list of nodes that I have. I could pin other things which would go to the top like this. I could unpin them. And right now I have just 5 or 6 nodes, so it's not very helpful. But if you have a large number of nodes, pinning some of them on top of your list is pretty helpful. And then there is something called checklists. For this right here is checklists. If I click here, we see a box like this. Go to preview, and I would click here, and if we go to preview, it shows a checklist which is ticked on, and you could just add stuff one after another. So apart from just bullet points, you could insert checklists, which helps to keep track of day-to-day tasks. So these were the just 4 or 5 main features. I wanted to talk about simple notes. These are pretty simple and straightforward features, not much advanced stuff. So of course, there are a lot of drawbacks of simple notes, which would bring me further towards the next application I'm going to talk about, which has much more advanced features, pretty much similar to Evernotes or OneNotes. Can you see my new screen?
Yeah.
Joplin. Okay. So the next software, it's called Joplin. Once again, it's a free and open source cross-platform note-taking application. There are quite a few differences from other applications. One, for example, it runs and stores notes locally instead of a web-based server, and also allows users to encrypt their notes. You can download this from this link, as I have put here on the slide. And these also available on Windows, Mac OS, Linux, App Store, Google Play, all this kind of things. I would next open the straight application. This is the desktop application version for Windows. The first thing I would point out is the graphical user interface has much more options than simple notes. As you could see, here are the list of notebooks that we have. So this is one notebook, this is a different notebook, this is a different notebook. And when I click each of these notebooks, I could see which are the notes are there itself. So this is one note that I created under weekly tasks. Then I had mid-semester goals. Then I have 4th week of September, like this. So it's much more easier to go back and forth. You could see this top panel where you could just select this part and put it on bold, italic, this kind of things, which wasn't possible in simple notes. So you had to use Markdown. So the graphical user interface is much more easier to work with. The next thing I would point towards is synchronization. On the bottom left, you could see there's a button called Synchronize. So at any point in time, if you just click that, all the data would be synced with a drive of your choice. And it also does stuff by itself every, I think, 5 minutes, but you could change that thing. So if you go to Tools, then Options, the first one is Synchronization. The default is Dropbox, but one of the great features of this is you could save this in a whole plethora of other options. OneDrive, Nextcloud, WebDAV, their server as well, or your own network system, like network-based storage, you could save there as you want, and you could change it, change the frequency of this synchronization happening. So this is not possible in simple notes, where all the stuff is just stored in their web-based server, and you don't have that much control over that. I have to go back now. The third feature I would point towards is the advanced import and export stuff, which is once again not possible from simple notes. Here it supports 6 different types of import files. And much more than the import one, I would say I was more interested towards the export features, because in simple notes, you could only save the files in a compressed file, .rar, and that's it. But here you could save it in forms of PDF, HTML, Markdown, Joplin, export file, there's different kind of things. And it's much more helpful in a team environment if you could share this in different kinds of file formats. The fourth feature I'm going to point, that's one of the most advanced features. I would say right now the best feature that Joplin has in comparison to other note-taking applications, which is encryption. If you see here on the bottom and go here, right now it's disabled, but I could just enable this, and I have to put a password to save my notes, which I'm not going to do at this moment. You get to choose if you want to encrypt all the notes that you have. And even if you save your data on their server, they won't be able to see whatever you are saving. It's end-to-end encrypted. If you had saved it in OneDrive, Google Drive, or other options, And if you're pretty concerned about the kind of data that you want to store, you might have some headache. But in this case, you are the sole owner of your data, and you get to choose how much security you want to put in there. So encryption is one of the best features of Joplin. The next thing I'm going to show is drag and drop, which of course wasn't there in simple notes. Whatever you want to embed in your file, you had to put a link there, as I had shown. And there was a specific syntax of putting that. I'm going to show this in one of the files here. Let's say I go to this file, but I had just put down 5 mid-semester goals. But I want to make this much more, say, cooler or informative, and want to just drag a couple of images from my computer. Let's try to do that. You can see my file explorer, right? I'm guessing that's a yes. So in this blank space, I want to just drag this and drop this here. And we have this image. And it's just that easy. You could drag and drop a lot of different kind of file formats, and it just works beautifully. And then I would put this image of Acadia. And I have that on the text editor. So you could just drag and drop a whole bunch of different stuff. Next, I could draw a PDF here. And I have one of my handwritten notes from TA. And I have this. One heads up, which I have noticed, is if you, first let me delete this. If you put in Word file, somehow it doesn't work exactly as you want them to be. And it shows up as just a link, clickable link. And if you click here, it opens up in the Word file rather than showing up on the Joplin application itself. And same thing happened when I just put in a PowerPoint file as well. So just a small heads up that not all file formats would be supported by this drag and drop. It still shows up at the bottom as a clickable link. So that's there. And then I would end with the last feature of Joplin, which isn't there in the other applications. And I would say it's the strongest feature among all of them I have talked about so far. It's called the web clipper. For example, if I go to this link, APS March meeting, and I just want to share, I just want to save this whole web page. The by default thing would be, it would be downloaded as HTML, or you could change it to PDF or other formats. But there's a web clipper version, just like Keshav was showing in Zotero. This Chrome extension, it's called Joplin Web Clipper. You could get it from the Joplin homepage link that I had shared earlier. And it allows us to download parts of the image, parts of the website, sorry, or the whole website, or just a screenshot, whatever you want them to be, and save them as a note in your Joplin application. Let me demonstrate it. I click here. First, it asks me click complete page or simplified page. Let's go with simplified for the time being. And it would be saved in my welcome notebook, and I will confirm it here. And let me try to go back to Joplin. It should be in my welcome. And yes, this is added now to the notes. One of the most cool features is the hyperlink still works. If I click here, it takes me to the places I should have gone to, like this. So that was the whole page being downloaded as form of notes. You could also take screenshots if you want to not go for the whole page. Clip screenshot, and I take a screenshot of this, and this already got downloaded. We could go to Joplin and check these things. And now under the notebook combined, we have just the screenshot, APS March meeting 2022. So yeah, you could take use of this web clipper tool to just download parts of website or the whole web page and save it in your notebook as and when required. I think it's a pretty cool feature to just use this along with your handwritten or typed notes, and you could refer back and forth all the time. I think that's it from the application's point of view. Now I'm going to hand it over to Siggie to have some further live demonstrations regarding much more advanced note-taking tools and techniques.
Okie doke. Oh yeah, I was looking at Dillinger. Let's see. I'm going to say a little bit more about Markdown just because I love Markdown. Here's what it looks like in an actual text editor or programming text editor, which has syntax markup. So, or syntax coloring. So, you know, in Visual Studio Code, I've got a, this is a paper I was working on, and I've got it's actually coming from my Rome research notebook. But you know, it opens with the preview on the right and the Markdown on the left. And as you change, you know, it automatically updates. So I just wanted to say, like, markup can work everywhere. And let's see. What was I about to say? I'm not sure. Here is Rome research. So I don't know how many people have heard hype about Zettelkasten, but those are this. Oh, could I talk more about? It is expensive. It is expensive right now. You're right. Yeah, there. I think there. I can't remember if there's a free version. I think there's not. I started using it when it was in beta, and I could do it for free for a while, and I got kind of hooked, but then I had to pay money to continue having it. But there's been a lot of hype around it, and oh, here. So I actually had on this site what some of my relevant Zettels were, or at least what I thought they would be. Oh no, I never really did anything with that. But so Spandan showed you how you can have internal links from one page in your notebook to another page in your notebook. And what some of the more advanced ones, pricey ones, give you, and there are some open source versions of these also. There's one called Foam that I've looked at and like, okay, is backlinks. So actually, I had intended to make some page of relevant Zettels, and a Zettel is like, oh, what is this? Oh yeah, here they are. Oh right, I had given them a Z prefix. So these were like ideas I was going to use in my paper. I was doing qualitative research. One of my users said, we don't have a gold standard. That seemed like a really important point. So I made a page called Z, we don't have a gold standard, where I could make notes about what he said, and here's the quote, and a note to myself, we should do more data collection, blah, blah, blah. And then it also gives me where else did where did I refer to this? Because on September 20th, for some reason I referred to it. So let's go to September 20th. Okay. Oh, at that point I was experimenting with Rocketbook, which I can't say I recommend, but I do like handwriting, and I'll show you some handwriting note stuff in a bit. Anyway, this is a big notebook, or as Rome Research calls it, a graph. So showing you the graph overview in this is just going to look really ugly, and it might take so long that, yeah, like I don't know how useful this is, but apparently this page is important for some reason. Let's see, what is that page? Can I double click and go there? Oh, well, I'm not gonna, there's all sorts of cool stuff. Oh, one thing I do want to say about Rome research that I really like is the way here. Let me go to a page that, oh, it's, there we go. You can see, you can embed stuff, all the kinds of stuff we were looking at in Joplin and Simple Note, but it's got this, I think it's killed my browser. But it's got, let me just see. All right. So, oh, and I also think I have VI embeddings on. There we go. So tab will just indent stuff. You can untab, and this works, you know, way like you would expect, except, whoops, I didn't need to do that. Except, you know, once you have stuff tabbed under some other thing, you can just close it. And you can also just go to a, you know, if you go to a heading, even though this isn't a page, it's just one heading on a page, you know, you can focus in on it. So if you have a lot of stuff there, you can drill in on that. That's all I'm going to show because this is a paid thing. Obsidian is also, it's considerably cheaper. And again, it's doing a lot of the same things. It's nicer than Rome research, but it doesn't do, you know, you can't program it and do like some of the amazing stuff you can in Rome research. And since I mentioned foam, I'll just bring it up because we should always have we should always be preferring open source stuff. The fact that Markdown is open source is a lot of the reason that it became so widespread and does so much for so many applications. This is my attempt to make a foam page. And I think I just loaded the foam example and let's see, this, well, nothing there. Oh, because I'm not logged in to GitHub maybe. Oh, that's just to my own website. Anyway, that's that. Going back to our slides. Oh, we already went over this. Okay, so as I said, there's a ton of different note-taking applications. We didn't talk about OneNote or Evernote much. They are available on a million different platforms, but they're not open source. I don't know if SimpleNote is open source. It's free, but I don't know if it's open source. There are a bunch of other Markdown editors like Bear and the idea with Rome Research and Obsidian is there's supposed to be ways of keeping a knowledge map, like a knowledge graph of all of your knowledge. And oh, let's see, there have been a few. Oh yeah, I don't know much about Notion. Sorry, just looking at the talk more about Rome Research. Okay, I think I did. Oh, and Noemi also asked about Notion. Oh, maybe when we get to the in 10 minutes, when we shift to the more interactive, I'd love to ask Noemi to show us what Notion looks like. All right. What I do want to show you, I still have, hold on, let me just, oh, here's something else I wanted to say about Markdown before we just leave that topic, is that there's this thing called Pandoc, which is a Markdown converter, and it will convert from Markdown to LaTeX. That's what it was, I think, originally made for, possibly, but it will do every conversion you can imagine from every flavor of Markdown. And there have become a lot of different flavors. There's the original, Common Mark, there's the GitHub flavored, which is popular in a lot of places. Oh, and then these are other things that are not Markdown. It can go back and forth from XHTML and HTML5. It can do ebooks. And that means, you know, if there's a forward arrow, it can convert into GNU text info, but not out of it. It can convert into and out of Haddock markup, which I don't even know what it is. RROF, I barely have any idea what that is, and except that I remember it from my early youth, which was like 90 years ago. And of course, LaTeX and contexts and XML, and it can do tons of great stuff with bibliographies. But, you know, so all Zotero can make BibTeX, and so Zotero is going to work well with Pandoc and LaTeX. And it can also do into and out of Microsoft Word, Jupyter Notebooks, you name it. So I just wanted to mention that because it's an amazing tool. And then what I wanted to show you, oh, I meant to get on here earlier. I am going to stop sharing on my desktop, and then give me a second. I'm going to connect from my iPad.
So while Siggie is just getting started, I'm just going to have another question for the audience. So just.
Oh, great, thank you. There's Zoom on here. Oh, to join the meeting. 978-3047. Six.
It looks like a lot of you thought that handwriting support was important, which I think is a nice segue.
Whoops. Sorry. Hold on. I gotta join this stupid thing again without audio.
Yeah, I was just saying that it's going to be a nice segue to our next segment because a lot of people thought handwriting support was important.
People said what was important?
Handwriting support and
Oh,
using,
good.
Yeah.
Yes. So one thing I want to say about handwriting is when I started doing taking notes on a device rather than on a paper notebook, yeah, I found all devices are not created equal. My Surface Book, which seemed like it was going to be so great, was not that great. and then I got myself a cheap iPad, and that was a lot nicer to use. And the handwriting just looked different. Okay, now I think I joined without, all right. Okay, so am I in here multiple times now? Well, anyway, I will now share from here. Oh, only the host can share in this meeting. How do I?
Just give me a second. I'll give you permission for that.
Oh, okay, thanks. Sorry, I tried this on my own Zoom, but didn't try it on this Zoom.
I think you should be good
Okay,
now.
excellent. Thank you. Okay, I'm sharing my screen, and I'm gonna go to, I'm gonna go here. Oh, so here's when I was at the height of my ambition to, wow, there's been a lot of notes. So I am not going to be able to catch up with that. But if there are important ones, I hope somebody will read them all and bring them, or just whatever, like if there are questions, that would like a response, let's get them spoken. So, oh, can you guys see what I'm sharing? Yes, you can. So I don't think you can see it very well, but I was doing this thing for a while where I was taking my Google Calendar and just copying a day out of it through a screenshot on my iPad, and then copying it into GoodNotes, which is the one I ended up liking, and then marking up my day with notes about what I was supposed to do. And I had these plans to, like, you know, wake up and do my meditation right away, and then have a planning Pomodoro and God knows what. So if you want to go completely overboard on time management, here I can give you ideas about how to spend all your time on time management. But you know, hold on, I'm zooming in and out here. This is one of the things I really like about GoodNotes, is that, you know, this is an 8x11 page, and you certainly couldn't read it as an 8x11 page. Maybe if you printed it out with really high resolution, you could read most of it if you had really good eyes or a magnifying glass. But on the iPad, you can zoom and shrink, and you can fit a lot on a page. And so you can get all kinds of stuff that's you know, of a like topic together in the same place. Hold on, I was going to show you guys some work stuff. Oh, that was a test I was doing that was stupid, but like I've done some design on here where I'm you know, designing an interface for software that I wanted to make, and for a paper that I was working on. You know, so it's great. You can copy in images and bits of text and make all kinds of stuff. And the other thing I wanted to show you here was, I'll just make a new page. It's just a little what handwriting looks like. So well, let's see what. Oh, I don't think that's not my favorite. I had been messing around with this earlier. here's my fountain pen. I think that's the one I tend to use the most. Whoops, let me go to, I also have, I really like the way it gives you some, real differences in the thickness of the lines. So even my completely messy handwriting, there's some beauty in it. Also, GoodNotes is one of the few note-taking applications that is vector-based. Most of them are raster-based, which means when you expand them, you're going to get pixelation. But what I think is really wonderful about this is I can like zoom way in and, whoops, let me go to a smaller pen size, start writing smaller stuff. And I don't know, I guess when I look at it on my, it's not a great resolution monitor that I'm looking at it over there, but I can still read this even when it's that small. And if I couldn't, again, like I can just zoom in.